Hey guys, Martin here bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle video, and so today we are going to be doing another look at the top 10 EZA TURs in Dokkan, considering we have had 2 new EZAs and a Super EZA since the last time we looked at this list, and so we are going to see how things have changed. Obviously with new events coming out and new stages all throughout the anniversary, that can cause changes in the list as well. Because as I always say when it comes to my tier lists, right, these are all based on my own personal experiences with the game. Yours might be different, so you might have different opinions on certain units, but as new events come out and we try out changes in different teams and things like that, certain units can seem to have more value than others. Some can lose value depending on which fights start to emerge as like the toughest fights in the game. So the list can change quite a lot, even with like one EZA releasing. Just adding that unit into the list isn't necessarily the only thing that's changed. So I always take a look back. I put the list together based on what my current thoughts are, and then I always take a look back at the previous list I made. And there's been quite a few that have shifted around a little bit. So I've tried to do the same thing I've been doing with my recent tier lists, where whilst I'm still doing the 1 to 10 format, I've put the number tiers in different colors, so that basically any tier that is the same color, any numbers, so like I think in this list, for example, like 2, 3 and 4 are all the same color, basically means that you could switch them around in a couple of different ways, and I could see arguments for the placements being that way round, right? So as always, if you don't agree with the tier list, do let me know down below in the comment section, but do let me know why. As I always say, I don't bother replying to comments that are just like stupid, like insulting or whatever, just like, I can't believe you put this guy here, but then there's no like, because this is the reason why he's bad, right? So any of those comments won't get replies, but other ones I'm always more than happy to discuss people's thoughts on the placements, and obviously I do explain the placements in the video, so some people who just skip to the end to see the list won't even hear this anyway, but it is what it is, right? So we're going to go ahead and jump in with number 10, although we do have number 10. I put 2 units rather than putting a separate honorable mention tier just for like 1 unit. I really wasn't sure what to do with this guy, right? Because people are very disappointed with his Super EZA. There are definitely situations where he could be quite useful. But the other unit that I put at number 10 was this Goku. Because this guy is interesting in that he is very much the meme that goes around about units where he is like potential man. Because if you actually get him to transform and then you get the good RNG when you're in the Super Saiyan 3 like transformation, this guy can be really, really good. He can do loads of damage, he's got decent defense, like he can be really, really good. But like I often find the last couple of times I've tried using him on a team, whether it's been for like running like a Super Saiyan 3 team, like meme build or anything, like using this guy on a team, the number of times I've used him recently and he just doesn't transform. And if he's just the Super Saiyan 2 Goku, he's not really anything all that impressive. Whereas this guy, at least there are situations where he can be a solid tank, right? Obviously his main disappointment is that we wanted him to be this like invincible slot 1 god, and realistically even after supering, he's still not as good as he probably should have been. So as a slot 1 unit, he is certainly not all that great. But I mean, there are events where he can be useful. The hardened battles against formidable foes thing, like the fact that you can stun enemies in the first phase of the fight, usually means that this guy can have a little bit of extra value. But he certainly didn't get the Super EZA that we all would have liked. But I can see situations where he's more useful for the team. Like this guy, after supering, is going to be more useful for the team defensively as a unit overall than like this guy just being stuck in Super Saiyan 2 Goku, right? But then obviously if this guy becomes Super Saiyan 3 Goku, he's not a slot 1 unit, so it's difficult to compare them directly, but with what he's doing for the team, putting out tons of damage and everything, he's obviously better than this guy. So you could put them either way round, like either one could be at number 10. I know a lot of people will just disregard this guy completely because his Super EZA is disappointing, but I don't think he's complete garbage. He's just not as good as we would have liked him to be, unfortunately. So moving on to number 9, we have the physical Goten and Trunks. I think I swapped them around with, did I swap them with Goku, or at least I moved them up from 10, I think, because these guys, I always forget, like until you use them again in the right kind of situation, you can really see how good these guys can be. because for the youth mission for the Vegeta boss battle at the end of the Goku story red zone, I ended up using these guys in slot 1 because the youth team's not exactly chock full of slot 1 tanks, right? But these guys fully built up have like an 80% chance to dodge. They're hitting pretty hard, and they ended up for the last couple of turns just having a 100% dodge rate in slot 1. I know it's down to RNG, but dodging absolutely everything. The youth team build that we made was able to be set up with like a full Kamehameha like setup. So these guys, that's the thing with these guys, I guess they could be higher on the list if they didn't need to have the whole rotation be Kamehameha in order for them to get the damage reduction, because that they really need that when it comes to taking some of these bigger hits. But I think they're still really good, and even being at number 9 is not to say that they are bad. It's just the fact that the upper half of the list especially is pretty stacked, but these guys are still very, very good, and so they are at number 9. Now at number 8 we have Int Janemba. This is the lowest I think I've put him on one of these lists, because there have definitely been a lot of instances recently, especially in the runs I've been doing for the tougher events, like the tougher red zones and the formidable battles and stuff like that, where I've ended up getting quite far through the run. And you guys know now with like some of these stages, you know, they're taking 25, 30, maybe even 35 minutes to do the whole run, depending on how much damage output the team is able to produce. And there's nothing more frustrating than getting to like 25 minutes into a run, and then this guy, after supering, when his dodge chance is then lower, doesn't dodge. And like even some of the tougher bosses, like in that Formidable Foes event, if he doesn't dodge after supering, he can take damage from normals against some bosses, which is kind of crazy. So it is complete RNG, and this is what I say when it comes down to personal experience with the units. You might be someone who you've used him to clear every difficult event in the game, and he always dodges every attack for you all the time, and then obviously you would probably put him higher on the list. But I have had whole recording sessions where I've lost multiple runs right near the end because this guy didn't dodge, and then I've had to start all over again. So that's the thing for me when it comes to ranking units on this list. Units that rely very heavily on RNG can still be high on the list, but it's harder for them to be placed over units that are consistently good without relying on RNG. And this guy, unfortunately for me, has been a bit disappointing lately in terms of his dodging. There are a lot of events, especially if the boss has like a Key Blast super specifically, where the LR Janemba is just way better to run than this guy. Obviously on some team builds you would just run both, but yeah, this guy has been selling for me a little bit lately, but obviously he has the potential to still be very, very good. But for now, for this list, he is at number 8. Then at number 7, we have Beerus. I put Beerus up a little bit higher this time around because people were commenting on the last one, like, he is a very good slot 1 tank that doesn't rely on RNG, but there's just, I don't know what it is. Like, you guys let me know what you like about this Tech Beerus. I just don't see what is so, like, great about him. Like, he tanks decently well in slot 1. He's not like an invincible god. And obviously you need to run him with a movie boss, a Realm of Gods, or Exploding Rage character, which isn't hard to do with the teams he's on, but that is at least a small restriction to like how you'd have to run him, which isn't the end of the world. He's not getting like massively marked down for that or anything, so don't worry. But yeah, he just never seems all that impressive. Like, on a lot of the teams you can throw him on, he doesn't link particularly well with some of the other units. He doesn't have any built-in additionals or anything like that, so he has the one attack that he does, which does a reasonable attack stat, and then unless you get the hidden potential, that's it. And then he does have the rage mode, which can be used as like a team protection ability, but you also remember you can't choose when to use it, right? So like, you could get hit with a big super on a turn where the boss is then basically left with barely any HP. You go into the next turn, you get Beerus's rage mode, which is then essentially kind of wasted because you just then kill the boss that turn. And then I believe the way it works with the phase change is then you would go into the next phase, the start of the boss fight, again the fight in the next phase, and he transforms again straight away because he can rage mode twice. And that can be quite useful because you get a decent setup for like the first phase of that, like the first turn of that next phase. But the problem is, like I say, you can't choose when to use it. So if it's a very difficult event and you get tagged in like the first turn, and so then he's getting his rage mode in the second turn, it can still be helpful to navigate those earlier parts, but you ideally want to use it later, or like you want to use these abilities when they are most tactically advantageous, and you don't get the choice with this guy. It just happens, right? Not to say that that's bad, but like the rage mode is still very good. You can do some decent damage, and obviously the whole point is you get like the team protection thing where you don't need to worry about like a super the turn afterwards, as long as they do all their supers during his rage mode. So he is still very good for sure. But yeah, for me at this point, we have him at number 7. I just think everybody on the list above him has arguments to be better than him. But in terms of like the tier colors, I've put Janemba and this guy as the same color, as well as this guy that we then have at number 6. And that is STR Kid Buu. STR Kid Buu is really, really good. I think people forget sometimes just how crazy good this guy's EZA is, because in events where, as long as the boss isn't hitting insanely hard straight away, this guy has like decent defense and damage reduction right away from turn 1. So in certain situations, he can go in slot 1 on his first turn. And then after he gets some attacks off, remember he builds up just by attacking, he doesn't need to super. So once he gets some attacks off, his defense is pretty high. Like his start of turn 2 defense can be pretty good, and as long as he hasn't been hit 6 times already, then he already has the he still has the big damage reduction. So this guy is really, really good. Once he starts getting built up, he can hit really hard. He also negates unarmed super attacks, which is a thing that, you know, some of these events do have bosses with unarmed supers in these new difficult events, so that's something that can't be overlooked. And then yeah, he's just a solid extreme unit. He has big bad bosses. He's just really, really good. I think people sometimes forget just how good this guy is, and with some of the best extreme units in the game, like with the Buu team is really, really good. Obviously Buhan, you know, in Buhan Super EZA is going to be on this list. Like this guy's just really, really good still. Very well done. But like I could see arguments on certain teams, right, because he can't always slot 1 all the time. So again, like RNG, this guy, if you're getting the perfect RNG, then he's not taking any damage ever, so you could argue that he's better. And this guy can very solidly tank in slot 1 in certain situations and has the rage mode. So I put all 3 of these guys in the same tier, although for me I would put Kid Buu at the top, right? So then we move on to the top 5, and as I said in the beginning, for me the top, like the 5, 4, 3 and 2, I kind of put all in the same tier, and we will explain why. So at number 5 we have the GT Super Saiyan Goku. Now I guess we could talk about these in one big section, because at number 5 we have Goku, but number 4 isn't Vegeta. Number 4 is the STR Super Gogeta, and then number 3 is Vegeta. Now the reason why I put a gap between these guys is when it comes to, if you're running them on a GT Heroes or Giant 8 power team, then for the most part they are the same. Like Goku gets the damage reduction just by having the allies, and then obviously gets more attack with the orbs, gets the crit chance with the orbs as well. But Vegeta, the GT Heroes or Giant 8 power allies are giving him extra attack and extra crit chance, which is good because, you know, damage is important. You still have to kill the boss. But if he's got no GT Heroes or Giant 8 power allies, he still has guard with 3 orbs, and then obviously is getting more defense per orb obtained as well as some damage reduction. Whereas if Goku has no GT Heroes or Giant 8 power allies, he gets no damage reduction and doesn't get the extra 77% defense. So he's still able to hit relatively hard. Like on a team with no GT Heroes or Giant 8 power, Goku will hit harder than Vegeta, but his defensive ability will be questionable, whereas Vegeta's defense will still be very, very good. And then STR Super Gogeta, I think this guy is still super underrated. I think sometimes people don't realize just how good this guy actually is. Like post supers, when he's built up and he's done like a couple of supers, he's tanking like 4 to 5 million damage hits. I don't know if people are like quite realize that. Now the thing is, people, I saw a meme, like people always make those memes about, like we mentioned him earlier with Goku, right, the potential man. Like I saw a meme where someone was trying to compare this guy to Inch-N-Ember, who I think, like as you can see from the list, this guy's way better than Inch-N-Ember. People were saying like, oh, like what is this? When there's a superclass enemy, a great chance to guard. But if you look at the landscape of the fights at the moment, the most difficult events are mostly against extreme class enemies where he has guaranteed guard. And then I used him in the, I think we did the Universe Survival Saga stage red zone that ends with Topo and Jiren, and they're both super class. And I think I used him for one of the missions on the Vegeta event in the blue zone, the red zone, like the final, you know, the Goku story final boss. And he was consistently guarding. Now, obviously, I mentioned before with like Janemba, RNG can be an issue, right? I'm not going to say this guy's always super good even against super class enemies, because mine always guards. But the thing is, post super attack, his defense is high enough, and with the damage reduction that he can get as well, like obviously if it's a super class boss doing a 5 million damage super, he's going to take a lot more damage if that guard doesn't proc, and he probably would die in that situation. But this guy can be a unit that you put on the team, and because he's providing support, he can be a very solid like floating unit who does loads of damage, gives a bit of support, and is still able to tank those attacks if he does get caught near the end of the turn. Whereas obviously a lot of the bosses now, especially some of the toughest bosses, are generally most often supering in slot 1. And obviously this guy's not a slot 1 unit, right? But once he's attacked, his defense is very, very good. And against an extreme class enemy, he has guaranteed guard. So there are situations, obviously, against a super class enemy, you might not get the guard. So in their best case scenario turns, like Vegeta is better than him defensively and offensively, I think. We saw in the initial showcase this guy being able to get like triple 25 to 30 million attack stat supers. Whereas this guy very often is doing between like maybe 15 to 20 and can still do 3 in one turn, to be fair. So they're all pretty close. Like I say, these guys are all in the same color tier, but the way I look at it is Goku is a lot worse if he's not being run with the GT heroes or giant 8-power allies than the Vegeta. And I feel like on a team where they're not having these allies, you could still argue that Vegeta could be better than Gogeta, but I don't think you could argue that Goku is better than Gogeta on a team without these GT heroes allies, just because his defense isn't quite up to par. And then obviously this guy, if you're against an extreme class enemy, you could make arguments that he's better than Vegeta, potentially. But like I say, I put them all in the same color tier, along with this guy, because this guy, Tech Cell at number 2, I said this in the last video, and it feels difficult to place this guy, because when you read his kit, he is very, 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 very similar to Buhan. So it feels weird to have like a massive gap between him and Buhan. But the reason there is a gap at all is that obviously this guy just doesn't have the meta relevant partners that Boo has. He also doesn't get like, there's a couple of little changes, right? Like he doesn't get a guaranteed additional super, whereas Buhan does. He has the extra bit of orb changing, which is helpful. He does lower enemies' attack if there's a super class enemy, which can be useful in some of these events still. And obviously they're giving like different kinds of support. Like they're two units that work really well together, but they are just very, very similar. So I can't compute like putting a massive gap between them. The gap exists because Buhan, who of course is number 1, is on a team with these crazy Boo units like we mentioned already, right? STR Kid Boo, Int Fat Boo is still super good in the meta because of the being able to get the instant revival, and then a Ghost Usher gets you set up well for these guys. This guy obviously links really well with Janemba, whether it's the Int one or the LR one, like that rotation works really well. This guy is just incredibly good. Gives you a ton of healing when you pick up the orbs. That's the other major difference, and each one can be beneficial in a certain situation depending on where you are. If you need HP at the start of the turn, Buhan heals you loads. If you don't need HP at the start of the turn, Cell heals you on super attack, which means if you do get hit hard in slot 1 and then Cell is attacking in like slot 2 or 3, he can heal you back a whole bunch and you can stay in like a safe spot. But obviously it just depends which of those situations you're in as to which one of those is more useful. But I think Buhan is just easier to place into these other teams and has a stronger team built around him than Cell does. And so because of that, and the fact that they're obviously on teams with other like Super Saiyans and the 10th anniversary LRs, that's why I put him in the same tier as these guys, because especially with how good the GT Super Saiyan EZAs are, you could probably make arguments that any of these three guys on certain teams are better than Tech Cell. But I think at his best, Int Buhan is still the best. I still think it's a big meme at this point, but I still think they just made a mistake with how crazy good this guy is. Or realistically, the way we should look at it is they made a mistake by not making some of the other hype anniversary EZAs as good as this guy, because this guy is incredibly good. Like, not only is he giving you that healing, he's hitting incredibly hard, he's able to tank really high damage supers. The only time I've had him die to a super was against, I think it was the Battle Hardened Formidable Foes Kid Buu, who by the time he gets hit a certain amount of times and gets built up to a certain point, his super attack was doing like 6 to 7 million around that kind of level. And this Buhan only, he still only took, I say only because I did die in that run, but he only took like 700k from a super that was doing somewhere between 6 and 7 million. So not only does he hit like an absolute truck, if you get the hidden potential, he can triple super, and you're often seeing him doing over 40 mil depending on the rotation. I just think it's really hard to say any of these other units are that close to him in terms of being on a tier list. So let me know what you guys think. But obviously that was the top 10. If we switch over here and have the zoomed out view, there you go. You can see in reverse number order, we have the Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta Super EZA or the physical Super Saiyan 2 to Super Saiyan 3 Goku, either of them at number 10. Then we have the physical Goten and Trunks at 9. Then all grouped together in the same kind of tier, we have Int Janemba at 8, Tech Beerus at 7, and STR Kid Buu at 6. Then grouped together here, we have the GT Goku at 5, STR Gogeta at 4, Int Vegeta at 3, and then Tech Cell at 2, because we have Int Buhan at number 1. So like I said at the beginning, if you are someone who's skipped to the end just to look at the list, despite all the explanations being throughout the video itself, as I said at the beginning, all the tiers that are the same color, you could switch the units around within that tier, and I probably wouldn't have much to argue. Like, I think there are arguments for moving the units within those tiers around in different ways, but the ones that are different colors are obviously set in place. I don't think the ones that are in the 10 slot, for example, should be any higher. I don't think Buhan should be any lower, but let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. If you would make any changes to the list, what would they be, and what would your personal top 10 look like? Let me know in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, check out the links down below, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.